Hey, some good news. I'm picking you up much more strongly now. I suggest you search the huts for weapons and equipment. Stay low and avoid contact if possible. You don't really want
to. Did you see something? I'm on it!
Jack, I've been able to tie your compass in with the transceiver. This means that now I can supply you with a bearings marker. It should give you a rough idea of where to go at least. Use your binoculars to survey the surroundings. Notice that they have a sound enhancer and movement tracker. Dr. Krieger has fitted everyone on the island with locator chips that you can track using the
every
binocs.
inch of this damn island! Let's figure out what the hell is going on here! Can do!
You should try to acquire one of their vehicles and drive to the helicopter refueling pad. It's on the other side of the island. From there, you can use one of their boats to escape. Take care. The mercenaries are trained to work together. If you alert one, they will bring others.
We're under full attack here. I think he's looking for the girl.
Well, you ain't gonna find her. We're taking her to the bunker. Crawl out.
You see that?
All personnel.
Mercenaries have established a communications facility here. You need to disrupt their communications by destroying the satellite dish. That will create enough confusion for you to escape, and then we can focus on finding Val.
Between the eyes, motherfucker!
more likely to encounter resistance on marked paths. If you keep to the jungle, your odds suddenly get a whole lot better.
It is, but man, I don't like these old...
Keep him busy. I'll get the others.
What?
Get him!
You ever wonder what we're guarding?
What do you mean? We're guarding the comm center. What the hell do you think we're doing?
Why can't we just all use cell phones or something like that?
Didn't you notice that there's no...
You hear something?
You're mine now.
What was that? Who is that? Oh!
Grenade!
The communication network is down. It'll take hours for them to restore their systems to normal. Until they do, you should be able to move around much more easily. I'm on a tight beam to you, so our communication will remain unaffected.
Is that someone there?
Look, whatever's happening there, it can't be as bad as what's happening here. That's all you're getting. Deal with it.
Whatever that was, I hope it was the only one.
Where are you? I'm having a hard time tracking your signal.
How the hell should I know? I'm in some kind of cave.
Right. The seawater pumping station.
Damn it, we lost the lights. That's all I need.
Just look for the elevator. That should get you to the research facility.
Sure.
You there! Right now! Could have any time and all hell is breaking loose! I know, but then get him!
You want more of that?
This place is total chaos.
The scientists in the main supervision area of the Treetop Research Facility should know where Val is. You're going to need to get that information from them.
Doyle, what the hell are they doing here?
It's all part of Krieger's plan, Jack. He's cooked up a serum which enhances every organ and muscle in the recipient's body. So far, he's just been using it on primates. At least as far as I know. The only drawback to the serum is that it decreases the recipient's mental facilities and makes them ultraviolent. Krieger controls them using conditioning implants.
What's going on over there?
Here's a newsflash. I just picked up the name of Jerry, the lead scientist there. He's trapped in a room surrounded by a whole mess of Trigens. He should have a card that will allow you to access all secured areas. You will need that to save Val. To destroy the regulator, we're going to have to create a backflow surge. First, you need to find the foreman and examine the plans. I should then be able to determine the critical junctions.
What was that? Did you hear that? Busy! I'll get the others!
Have you found the foreman yet?
Yeah, he's lying right here. I'm looking at the blueprints to the regulator right now. Looks like the main junctions are in sections 4, 5, and 7.
That is excellent. Now get inside that regulator. I can mark the locations you need to reach. Good hunting, Jack.
Funny. I thought I heard something.
Doyle, these things are huge. What the hell are they?
I've heard some rumors. The mercs call them fat boys. Watch out for them. They're heavily armed.
I kind of figured that part out myself.
There he is!
What was that?
Right!
Suck on this! Open here. You see something?